They told you to write your name once, one clean line, one entry, one existence, but something in you refused to be that small. You wrote it twice, same ink, same hand. A quiet act of defiance that no one saw coming. The room froze, papers stopped rustling, pens hovered midair. The silence that followed wasn't confusion, it was fear. You didn't break a rule, you broke a hierarchy. You reminded them what it looks like when a person refuses to be confined by the shape of expectation. And for that, they labeled you a threat. They sealed the files. They erased your signature from every record, as if pretending you never existed could unwrite the mark you left on their system. You were led out of the room without resistance, but inside, something ancient woke up. Not anger, clarity. You realized that every empire fears the individual who writes their name twice, the one who refuses to vanish quietly, the one who signs their own destiny without waiting for permission. Outside, the air felt heavier than before. The city looked the same, but something in its rhythm had shifted. People walked past you without noticing, and yet, in your chest, a new language began to form, one made of silence, defiance, and cold understanding. You weren't excluded, you were exiled into greatness. That night, you sat in the corner of your room, staring at your reflection in the window, rain tracing its way down the glass like the signatures of ghosts. You asked yourself why the world punishes conviction, why it builds walls around those who dare to think beyond obedience. But the answer came like thunder, because control depends on silence, and you had spoken in ink. You had declared your intent to exist twice, once for who you were, and once for who you were becoming. The system can't contain that kind of evolution. It fears it more than chaos itself. You think back to the looks on their faces, not anger, not disgust, but alarm. As if they saw a reflection of something they buried long ago. You had become the reminder of their own cowardice, the proof that they once dreamed and surrendered. And that realization pierced deeper than any insult. You see now that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the world that swore it wanted you to succeed, as long as you stayed beneath them, as long as your light didn't expose their shadows. When they sealed your file, they thought they buried you. But you understand something they never will. Sealed doesn't mean dead. It means hidden, protected, waiting. What they tried to erase became sacred, preserved in silence. You feel it, the pulse of your name under your skin, echoing like an unfinished prophecy. You walk home through the storm, head unbowed. Lightning flashes across the sky, illuminating your reflection in every puddle. Two faces, two names, one purpose. The world will pretend not to see you now, but it will remember you later. It always does. You stopped writing your name, not because you forgot who you were, but because every time you did, it felt like summoning a ghost. The world made sure you believed that ambition was a crime, that wanting more than silence was dangerous. They didn't destroy you with chains or fire. They did it with paperwork, with signatures, with the quiet power of people who smile while burying you alive. You became a threat not because of what you did, but because you dared to exist with conviction. So they sealed the files, erased your trace, made sure your story ended where it began, in stillness. But the silence they forced on you began to grow teeth. Days bled into nights, indistinguishable, heavy, motionless. You'd stare at your own reflection like it was someone else's shadow, someone weaker, someone who used to believe. The room around you felt smaller each morning, the walls whispering names of those who obeyed and were rewarded. You weren't one of them. You carried a mark, the invisible kind, carved into the way people looked away when you entered the room. Their eyes didn't hate you, they feared what you reminded them of: freedom, untamed and unapproved. Rejection came so often it stopped feeling like pain and started feeling like truth. You began to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe silence was safer. But even in the dark, something kept moving. A pulse, a breath that refused to vanish. You'd wake at strange hours, sweating from dreams where you were running, but the ground beneath you was paper, and every step left ink behind your name, written over and over, smudging into black rivers. The ink became your blood, the fear became ritual. You started realizing that exile had its own kind of clarity. When there's nothing left to lose, you start hearing what the noise always drowned out: your own defiance. It speaks slowly, like an ancient language your ancestors once whispered into the fire before going to war. You remembered those who came before you, the thinkers, the fighters, the ones erased for thinking too loudly. They were all sealed too, their truths buried in archives labeled dangerous. You began to understand that you were part of that lineage, that the world had always been ruled by those who feared the ungoverned mind. Every rejection letter became scripture, every failure an initiation. Pain stopped feeling like punishment, it started feeling like translation. You were learning a dialect that only the broken could understand, how to survive invisibly until the time comes to reappear unrecognizable. You walked through cities that didn't know your name anymore. Crowds passed by like water, faces flickering under streetlights that hummed like secrets. You began observing more than speaking, analyzing the rhythm of power, the subtle way control disguises itself as order, the way mediocrity protects itself by labeling brilliance as madness. You saw through it. You saw the illusion they built, and you knew that's why they sealed your name, because if left unchecked, you'd remind people that the cage isn't real. You'd make them question their own obedience, and they can't afford that. You became your own ghost, haunting the system that erased you, watching, waiting, studying. Every scar on your memory became a symbol. The knife of betrayal sharpened your intuition. You learned that survival wasn't about being seen. It was about staying silent long enough to understand who really pulls the strings. In the stillness of those nights, you realized something terrifying. The people who sealed your name weren't powerful. They were afraid. They had seen the look in your eyes, the look of someone who has nothing left to lose. And that, in every age of man, has always been the beginning of power. You reach a night where the silence feels heavier than the dark itself. The city outside has forgotten your name, but your mind hasn't. You sit there, in that dim room where rejection letters scatter the floor like fallen soldiers. The air feels still, as if even the universe is waiting for your next move. Somewhere between the ticking clock and your own heartbeat, something shifts, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a realization that the system never feared your failure. It feared what you'd become if you refused to stay broken. That's when the spark ignites. You start to remember the faces that smirked when you fell, the ones who said you weren't built for it. Their voices used to echo in your skull like poison. Now, they sound like fuel. The pain they gave you no longer burns you, it forges you. The humiliation becomes your firewood. You begin to see life like a war no one warned you about, where survival isn't about weapons but about will. You've been trained by pain, sharpened by loss, and reborn through silence. You realize you were never weak. You were just waiting for the storm to shape you. You start doing what no one sees. Early mornings, late nights, reading, planning, moving in shadows while everyone else sleeps in comfort. You become a ghost, not the kind that haunts, but the kind that observes. You learn the art of patience, the ancient kind, the patience of a predator watching from the tall grass, invisible but inevitable. Every scar becomes a sigil, a symbol of a lesson learned in blood. Every failure, a secret message written in code only you can now read. You no longer crave validation, you crave mastery. Somewhere deep inside, a voice begins to whisper truths you once feared to believe. That greatness isn't given, it's taken. That power doesn't come from approval, it comes from defiance. You stop asking why they sealed your name. You stop wondering when the world will understand you. Instead, you begin to understand the world, how it feeds on conformity, how it punishes audacity, how it fears the ones who don't wait for permission to exist. You see through the illusions, the fake smiles, the systems built to keep people obedient. You learn to move differently, think differently. You start walking like someone who knows they've already been underestimated. Nights bleed into mornings, but the fatigue doesn't crush you anymore. It baptizes you. You taste the bitterness of failure one last time, and it's not poison anymore, it's medicine. The same pain that once broke you now teaches you focus. The same rejection that silenced you now sharpens your intent. You no longer beg to be seen. You decide to become undeniable. You stop writing your name for approval. You start engraving it into time itself. Every small step, every hour spent alone, becomes a strike against everything that tried to erase you. You rise not with noise, but with precision. You move like a secret the world isn't ready for. You've stopped chasing light. Now you carry it. Your discipline becomes your language. Your silence becomes your signature. You no longer seek revenge, you embody it. The spark doesn't explode. it consumes. It turns every scar into strategy, every betrayal into blueprint, every downfall into design. They thought sealing your name was the end, but they forgot one thing. You can't bury someone who's learned to burn from within. The climb begins in silence, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that swallows. You wake each day before the world remembers your name, moving through shadows that never clap, never praise. You don't chase the spotlight anymore. You chase control over your breath, your habits, your mind. The world that mocked you has gone quiet, and in that quiet, you hear something ancient stirring inside. The sound of discipline grinding against doubt. Every step feels like dragging chains uphill, yet something in you refuses to stop. You no longer seek light. You become it, one exhausted breath at a time. You remember who betrayed you. Their laughter used to echo, sharp as glass. Now it fuels you. Each sneer becomes a stone in your foundation. You start building a version of yourself that no one saw coming, a creature forged in silence and sustained by vengeance disguised as focus. You learn to move strategically, never emotionally. You withhold words, protect your energy, and let the world underestimate you. That's the trap you set, to rise while they sleep. You learn the psychology of patience, that waiting can be more violent than war. You train your mind to see patterns, the subtle manipulations, the whispered doubts, the traps designed to break the weak. You no longer react. You observe, you calculate. You become the quiet observer who sees everything and speaks nothing. Power begins to hum beneath your skin, not loud, not boastful, but steady, like a current only you can feel. The climb isn't beautiful, it's brutal, it's solitary. But somewhere between the sleepless nights and the endless repetition, you start to see the outline of something divine, the version of you they tried to erase. You no longer pray for ease, you pray for clarity. You stop asking why it's hard and start asking what it's teaching you. Pain stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like instruction. The climb strips away everything that isn't real, friends, illusions, comfort, noise, until only the essential remains. The old you would have begged for shortcuts. The new you knows that shortcuts create weakness, and weakness is death. You carry scars not as proof of suffering, but as currency. Each one bought your next step up. At times you question if the summit even exists. You start to suspect the climb is the destination, that the point was never to reach the top, but to burn away everything that wasn't meant to survive the ascent. You look at your reflection and almost don't recognize it. The eyes sharper, the jaw set, the soul tempered like forged steel. You think of the name they sealed, the files they buried, and you realize something horrifying and liberating all at once. They didn't bury your name, they buried their fear of it. The world begins to feel smaller now, not because it shrank, but because you grew. You start moving differently, slower, deliberate, untouchable. Your silence has weight, your presence, gravity. Every mistake you made becomes a lesson in disguise, every loss a calculation in patience. You understand now what the ancients meant when they said power isn't taken, it's endured. The climb taught you to see through illusion, through distraction, through your own weakness. And when the wind hits your face and you look down at how far you've come, you realize something irreversible. You no longer need anyone to unseal the files. The climb itself was the unsealing. Every scar, every sleepless night, every betrayal, proof that the name they tried to silence still echoes in the storm. You don't announce your return. You don't need to. The mountain already knows your name. They thought sealing your name would erase you, that by denying your existence, they could contain your fire. But in the silence they forced upon you, something ancient began to move. You started hearing the low hum of your own will. The same will that once begged for approval now sharpened into something colder, hungrier, untamed. The rejection no longer hurt, it trained you. Every locked door became a gym for your discipline. Every insult a weight you lifted until your heart was armor. You began studying patterns, human behavior, power itself. You stopped seeking fairness and started learning control. At first, no one noticed your evolution. You spoke less, watched more. You observed how people chase comfort, how they mistake arrogance for confidence, noise for strength. You learned the art of patience, the kind that feels like stillness but hides violence beneath. You became your own weapon, forged in the dark, shaped by hands that once pushed you away. The world thought it broke you, but it only rearranged your priority. You stopped craving light because you realized shadows protect more truth than sunlight ever could. You learned that victory doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from outlasting the silence. While they slept, you worked. While they laughed, you calculated. Every small step became deliberate, each move a note in the symphony of your return. You didn't need applause, you needed precision. You started to understand what the ancients meant by resurrection, not rising from death, but from denial. You began building without witnesses, shaping an empire out of whispers and discipline. There were no miracles, only strategy disguised as fate. When the results appeared, they didn't recognize. The voice was the same, but the tone had gravity now. The presence they ignored had become impossible to overlook. People began using your name again, but this time with hesitation, as if saying it might summon something dangerous. They felt it before they understood it. You had shifted the energy. The same system that sealed your file now trembled at your consistency. They realized too late that your silence wasn't surrender, it was incubation. Power doesn't announce itself, it radiates. You became that radiation, subtle, inevitable. The old rules no longer applied because you stopped asking for inclusion. You built outside their walls until their walls bent toward you. The betrayal that once wounded you became the proof that you were never meant to be accepted. You were meant to be studied, and even your enemies began to respect the quiet force behind your rise. They whispered theories, stories, lies, anything to explain what they couldn't categorize. But the truth was simple: you endured longer than their attention span. Now your reflection feels different. There's no anger left, only precision. The eyes that once looked for mercy now measure distance. The heart that once broke now calculates outcome. You've become the thing they feared most, a person who no longer needs their permission to exist. You don't beg for entry, you build new doors. You don't compete. You alter the game until it becomes unrecognizable. The same name they sealed is now carved in places their laws can't reach, in memory, in motion, in consequence. And somewhere deep inside, you know this wasn't a comeback, it was an evolution, the death of weakness, the birth of inevitability. You understand now that every rejection was part of the initiation, every silence a secret handshake with destiny, because the world doesn't reward the loud. It crowns the ones who rise from ashes and make the wind bow. And when they finally unseal your name, it won't be a return, it will be a reckoning. They called your name again, the same one they once erased. The air shifts when you walk in, as if the walls remember. You feel the echo of your footsteps like thunder under marble floors that once rejected you. The same voices that whispered your failure now choke on your return. No applause, no grand music, just silence, sharp and reverent. Because silence is what power sounds like when it finally bends toward you. You don't smile, you don't thank them. You only stand there in the place that once buried your name and let the truth breathe. You were never supposed to fit inside their structure. You were built to outgrow it. They unseal the files with trembling hands. Your name, written twice, still bleeds through the pages. A defiance that time couldn't erase. You remember when those letters felt heavy, dangerous, forbidden. Now they gleam like a weapon in light. Each stroke of ink is a scar reborn as scripture. They study you now, the same way ancient kings studied omens before war. Not with admiration, but with caution. Because something in you has shifted. You're no longer reaching for validation. You've become the consequence of their doubt. You used to beg to be understood. Now understanding you feels like a threat. You stand before them, calm, measured, unreadable. Every betrayal carved new depth into your voice. Every rejection sharpened your presence. They see it now, the discipline behind your stillness, the violence hidden in your patience. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks quietly, remembering who tried to break it. You let the silence stretch, long enough for them to realize you're not waiting for permission. You're witnessing judgment. You don't speak first. They expect gratitude, humility, surrender. But all you give them is truth. You tell them that greatness is never granted, it's taken. Not through arrogance, but through endurance. You didn't climb back to prove them wrong. You climbed because gravity itself began to offend you. They look at you like they're seeing a myth, one they once buried, now resurrected before their eyes. You see fear flicker behind politeness, respect born not from love, but from inevitability. You walk toward the sealed archive, the same one that held your name hostage. The The lock clicks open without resistance, as if even the metal knows its master. Dust rises like ghosts of forgotten trials. You touch the folder once branded forbidden, and it's warm, alive, pulsing with history. This was their control, their illusion of authority. You pick it up, and in that motion, every injustice, every silence, every humiliation collapses into insignificance. The war wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing how fragile the system truly was. The room fades around you. You hear nothing but your own breath, steady, absolute. You've outgrown apology. You've become the thing they whispered about in corridors. The anomaly that obeyed no rule but its own law of becoming. Power hums beneath your skin, not loud but ancient, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, the kind that rewrites reality by existing. You look at them, not with anger, not with mercy, but with understanding, because the truth is cruel and clean. They never feared your failure, they feared your return. As you walk out, the seal cracks behind you. The wind shifts again, carrying your name through corridors that once silenced it. The world doesn't cheer. It bows in quiet recognition. You've transcended the need to be remembered, because now you are memory itself. The file once sealed has become legend, and legends never ask for permission to exist. They said your name would fade when the files were sealed. They said silence would bury you, that your defiance would be forgotten. But years later, your echo still moves through the walls they built to contain it. You stand in the aftermath of what they feared, not chaos but clarity. You learn that power doesn't roar, it hums beneath the skin, quiet and deliberate. You used to beg for acknowledgement, now your very existence is an act of rebellion. The same name they tried to erase has become a symbol they whisper about in boardrooms and dark corridors. A warning, not a memory. You remember what it felt like, the betrayal, the humiliation, the isolation, the long nights where you weren't sure if you were building yourself or destroying what was left. You faced your own mind like an enemy, dissecting every wound, every failure, every reason you should have given up. And yet something ancient moved beneath all that pain, a force that spoke without words, that reminded you of the truth. Those who are feared are never forgotten. You weren't meant to be liked. You were meant to be inevitable. Now you move differently. You speak less, but every word is weighted. You trust fewer people, but those who remain understand that loyalty isn't a contract, it's blood. You walk through rooms once filled with those who laughed at you, and they avert their eyes. They call it respect. But you know what it really is? Recognition of the monster they created while trying to break you. You carry their rejection like armor, every scar now an emblem of precision and patience. Your transformation was never about revenge, it was about evolution. You learned to hide in plain sight, to let them believe you were gone while you rebuilt in silence. You mastered the art of invisibility until the day you chose to be seen again, not as the victim they expected, but as the storm they prayed would never return. The weak sought pity, you sought permanence, and that difference turned you into something beyond their understanding. The sealed files were never about paperwork, they were a metaphor, the attempt to contain a truth too dangerous for a system built on obedience. They marked you as unstable, unpredictable, too much. But in every era, it's the too much that rewrites history. Empires fall not because of their enemies, but because of the one exile they underestimated. You became that exile. You turned rejection into a ritual. You turned your scars into scripture. Now your name is written where no ink can fade, in the minds of those who still fear what you represent. They tried to destroy your legacy before it began, but you made sure your story outlived their authority. You no longer chase glory, you carry it. You no longer speak of pain, you weaponize it. You don't seek freedom, you embody it. You are proof that silence isn't defeat, that solitude isn't exile, that sealing the files didn't end the story, it immortalized it. And as the world begins to whisper again, as others step forward to write their names twice, they remember yours, not as a signature on a page, but as a prophecy fulfilled. The system still fears your kind, the ones who don't break when buried, who bloom in secrecy, who rise not to be seen but to remind